Okay,
killed
yeah,
by
because
him.
I remember it being like hugely high, and I was like, how have we not heard of this?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a lot more than Jack the Ripper. Of course, Jack the Ripper was killing white people, so maybe that's why, it's still a well-known thing. And also, there actually is more documentation about Jack the Ripper than there is about this guy.
Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me that much, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess our mystery here is, well, who was the Ripper? How many people did he really kill? And did he actually even exist? Because at the time the killings were happening, this was between late 1910 and mid-1912, a lot of people in Atlanta didn't think there actually was a serial killer. And all this head bashing and throat slashing was just random murders happening.
Well, and there was a number of cases that were attributed as being Ripper cases that it was really there was a lot of assumptions made to say that the MO was the same.
Yeah, I think that
Loosely connected is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the press, I think the Atlanta press, I think, started going back and adding people in to really juice up the story. But a lot of these 19 to 21 victims were victims of gunshot wounds and stuff like that, and so
there were stabbings rather than bashings and slashings.
Yeah, stabbings, but not throat slitting and all that. So, which doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't him. I mean, maybe you'd like to mix up his MO a little bit. I don't know. But at the same time, a big city like Atlanta, murders are going to happen anyway. Even if you don't have a Ripper on the loose. So anyway, I talked to a guy named Vance McLaughlin. He's a retired professor of criminal justice. And he wrote a paper on the Ripper with Robert Bing III in 2013. And you guys have seen that paper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent you the link.
Yeah, no, that study was actually really, really well done.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. It was. He's a pretty thorough guy. But anyway, he and Bing looked at the 19 victims, and because the 21, when we're referring to 21, most of the papers even think that the murders ended in mid-1912. But there are some people who claim that there was another murder in 1913 and another one in 1914. So we're
generally
gonna start,
believe those were just tacked on.
Yeah. So we're going to start at the number 19. They went through all the information. They went to newspaper archives, looked at death certificates and all that. And they managed to remove all but 8 from the list. Although there's one of them I'm questioning a little bit. I was thinking I might add it back in, but I'm not really sure. Kind of on the fence about that. It might be a copycat killing. In fact, there's probably a good
I was going to say, this case, because of the publicity, lended itself to have a lot of copycats.
Well, but not at first.
Well,
right?
I'm talking about it in the height of it.
Okay.
From midway on,
sure.
It would have been such an easy situation for somebody to just do what they thought it was going to be, and it just gets lumped in.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, there was one person I'm going to talk about a little later on who actually had the clever idea to go murder a rival. She kind of got busted and didn't succeed in her crime, but I'll tell you about that later.
Oops.
Yeah, oopsie. Also, getting back to Professor McLaughlin again, he writes and researches about historic and obscure serial killers, and he's done a lot of research on the Atlanta Ripper, I think more than anybody, really. I managed to track him down, and I gave him a call. Mostly because I wanted to confirm my claim that the Ripper didn't mutilate his victims, and the Saturday night thing too. And he did confirm that. Yeah, there was no mutilation, and it wasn't like clockwork or anything like that. Sometimes there would be months in between killings, and there was a period in mid-1911 where there was for about 4 murders came along about once a week. And
that's where the every Saturday night thing came in, because it was about a week apart.
Yeah. And anyway, the professor was a real nice guy, and we had a nice talk because we both like to talk about murder and mayhem.
That's true.
Yeah, he was telling
winning friends and influencing people.
Yeah.
I know. He was telling me about this crime that some crime or another. I can't remember if he even know what the crime was. It's not the Atlanta Ripper. And then that reminded me of Jeremy Bamber. So I was like, hey, have you ever heard of the Jeremy Bamber case? He said, no, tell me about it. So I told him about that. I think he's probably going to check it out. But it's such a juicy case. You know? Yeah, and we were just going batting mysteries back and forth like that. Oh, and I also wanted to mention the professor's written 2 books. I told him, he didn't ask me to, but I told him I would give him a plug for his books.
For the help he gave,
And so his 2 books are about serial killers. One is called The Postcard Killer. He's about a pedophile and serial killer named J. Frank Hickey. And he was finally arrested in 1912, died in prison in 1922. And why he didn't get strung up is kind of a mystery to me, because the guy's crimes, I don't know if you've read about this guy or not.
I haven't.
Yeah. Yeah. The crime he got caught for is he lured a 7-year-old boy with promises of going to a candy store, took him to an outhouse.
All right, I already know this is going to be heinous.
Oh, it's heinous. And it gets more heinous. Well, he rapes the little boy, strangles him, stuffs him down in the outhouse, and then 18 days later, the chief of police in his town gets a postcard, basically saying where you can find the body. And he sends 2 cops around to check the outhouse. Oh, I forgot to mention, after he murdered the little boy, he went into the saloon and started drinking. Now that's ballsy. So anyway, the cops did not see the body down there. Apparently some other people had come along, go figure, 18 days later, and the body was covered with something.
Yeah.
The body didn't get found until like a year later. Well, so meantime, the little boy is still missing. His parents are, of course, quite anguished about it. He starts sending postcards to the parents, taunting them.
This is a common sentiment with psychopaths.
Yeah. Well, actually, I can't think of a single case where somebody has sent postcards to the family of their victims.
There have been a number of things that I've read about where people have been sending stuff to the families.
Yeah, anyway.
It's a terrible thing.
Yeah, I don't understand why he didn't get the death penalty. But anyway, that book is The Postcard Killer. And the other book that he's written is called The Mail Order Serial Killer, and it's about a guy named Harry Powers, who is thought to have killed as many as 50 people, and he did get strung up. He was, I think he was caught in late 1931 and put on trial, and he was strung up about 6-7 months later, early 1932. They really did.
So a fair and speedy trial.
Yeah, they didn't waste a lot of time back in those days. So anyway, enough of that. I haven't read the books yet. They get good reviews on Amazon, except for one guy. There's one guy who ordered The Postcard Killer, and there's another book out there called The Postcard Killers by James Patterson. You know that guy? He writes a lot of crime novels. Yeah, I guess he was wanting to get that book. He accidentally orders The Postcard Killer. So he orders this one instead, and he posted a 1-star review because he was so pissed because he got the wrong book.
Because he ordered.
Yeah.
Oh god.
The other reviews are 5-star reviews.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, back to our Atlanta killings. McLaughlin and Bing took 2 of the victims off the list because they died of gunshot wounds. 2 were
that's not really
stabbed.
the MO.
Yeah, not really. One was, her throat was slashed, but she was thrown into the river afterwards. And so that
didn't match.
Yeah, it doesn't quite match.
Because the MO was to bash them in the head, drag them somewhere secluded, and then cut their throats.
Yeah. Yeah, another victim had her skull crushed, but her throat was not slit. Another one was stabbed in the throat. 4 others were eliminated because someone other than the Ripper had been convicted for killing them. 2 more were eliminated because they were probable suspects. But one of them is the one that I was thinking maybe possibly should be on the list, but that could also be the copycat killing that I was talking about. So anyway, they narrowed it way down to 8. Still a pretty decent amount of people.
It's still quite a number of people for one person.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's more than I plan on killing.
I was going to say, I haven't gotten to 8 killings yet.
No, me neither.
Yeah, despite all of your hard work.
Yeah.
You know how hard it is to kill people from my office chair? It's really difficult.
Yeah.
I don't lift a finger and they don't die.
It's
really
crazy. Yeah.
This is just not working out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the problem is with committing murders, unless you go out and totally randomly kill somebody, if you kill somebody, it's because you're highly motivated to murder them. And that's kind of points a finger back at you. Yeah, so probably why I'm never going to kill anybody. Also, I don't like blood.
So
I also didn't mention this. One person saw the Ripper and lived to tell the tale.
Oh.
Yeah, that was Emma Lou Sharp. She described him as a tall black man with broad shoulders, wearing a black suit and a wide-brimmed hat. There was one other account that I read, said another woman named Mary Yadell had met the Ripper. She left her employer's place and went out in the alley, and she saw a tall black man. I think this was right after the reports in the newspapers from Emma Lou Sharp seeing a tall black man. She goes out in the alley, sees a tall black man, and runs back inside and tells her employer. He goes out and confronts the guy. The guy just left, but No,
but he had a gun. The employer went out with a gun.
Well, yeah, and just because he was tall and black doesn't really make him the Ripper.
No,
at all.
Yeah,
and
not
when
quite,
you see somebody run into the, I think it was in an alleyway, right?
Yeah.
Run into the alleyway brandishing a firearm.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave.
I'm gonna leave it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
In a hurry
Yeah.
as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Emma Lou's the only one who saw him and lived to tell. But
Because she got attacked.
she did get attacked. Yeah.
She got stabbed in the
She
back.
got stabbed in the back. Yeah. So I'll talk about that in a minute here. Just in chronological order, we'll talk about the murders. First one was October 3rd, 1910. That was Maggie Brooks, age 23, walking home from work one night, and somebody bashed her on the head and slit her throat. And then months later, Rosa Trice, her body was found really close to her house, like about 75 yards away.
This is, 3 or 2 months later.
January 22nd, 1911. Yeah, 3 months later.
Just a little over 2 months.
Yeah.
2 3 months somewhere in there, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking, let's see. No, I'd say more like 3.5 months, but, whatever. Her husband was arrested for this. He was released for lack of evidence, and it does fit the MO pretty well. Next up, May 27th, 1911, Mary Walker, age unknown. Her body was actually found in the rear of her home. She had left her job as a cook the previous night, and I'm guessing that the Ripper followed her home. And people say, I'm not sure if these accounts mean that she was actually in her home or in the yard behind her home. I'm not totally sure.
Every time I read it, I got the impression that she was outside.
Yeah.
I never got the idea that the Ripper was killing people inside of their home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
I
don't
didn't
think
either.
So. Yeah, I don't think so.
I think it's a heck of a lot more work than he was up for.
Yeah, I think so. So anyway, at this time there's still months going by, but now it's sped up a little bit. Next one was June 15th, 1911, so, a little over 2 weeks later. And that was Addie Watts. She'd been hit with a brick instead of a rock, and then dragged into the bushes, and her throat was cut. And next up, June 24th, only 9 days later, Lizzie Watkins, same MO. She was hit with a rock, throat cut. And then came Lena Sharp. That's Emma Lou Sharp's mother. Yeah. There are two versions of this. The version you hear the most is that Lena had gone to the store, and when she hadn't come back in about an hour, Emma Lou got worried and went looking for her and went to the store, and she hadn't been to the store. So she's walking back home, frantically worried about her mother, and just runs into this black guy, tall black guy, broad shoulders and all that stuff. And he said to her, "How are you feeling tonight?" And she said she was feeling fine, and she tried to walk past him, and he says, "Don't be afraid. I never hurt girls like you."
And then stabbed her in the back.
Stabbed her in the
And
back.
laughed.
And laughed.
What?
Yeah, well, that was a great joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I don't think that's a joke at all.
No,
Yeah.
that's just sick.
Yeah.
Weirdo.
Yeah, and then of course the body of her mother was found not too much longer after that. Mm-hmm. The second version. I forgot to mention, by the way. Hang on. That first story was from the Atlanta Constitution. There were several papers in Atlanta at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next version is from the Atlanta Journal. In this version of it, Lena and Emma Lou were out walking, and then
Together.
together. And he jumped out of the bushes. He hits Lena on the head with a brick. And then she's knocked unconscious, so he starts slashing at Emma Lou, who screams and runs, but faints from blood loss, because apparently he did connect a few times. And then she ran off. The Ripper cuts Lena's throat and then follows Emma Lou. She wakes up and finds him standing over her with a knife. But then the sounds of people running, footsteps and everything, people came running, and so he took off into the darkness. So one of two stories,
I'm inclined to believe the first one.
Uh-huh.
The second one sounds like it's from a John Grisham novel. Mm-hmm. It's just
Grisham.
It's just perfect. Oh, the high tension of it all. It just sounds like it is a reporter running off his little details.
I don't know. You don't think that him saying, "Don't worry, I never hurt girls like you," and then stabbing her in the back and laughing, that's not out of a John Grisham novel? Like, that's not...
So
You think that's more believable?
I do.
Really?
Picture Manson saying that as he walks by you on the street.
I mean, I just think this second one sounds more like his MO.
It kind of does.
That he bashed her over the head and then was standing over her and she happened to come to.
But he never attacked a pair. of all of the cases that are this central core 8 murders that are believed to be attributed to him.
Yeah, always lone women.
They're always alone. So this is a real jump.
But she was alone too. You mean it's just single a night?
One by themselves, one at a time, alone, walking down the street.
I don't know. She was alone walking down the street.
No.
It was her and her mother walking together in the second version.
Oh, in the second version. Yeah, that's
right,
true.
Which is the one you're saying that you find more plausible.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think the MO of that second one sounds more plausible. But
so
why not a
keep in mind?
Why not both?
Keep in mind that Emma Lou is the mother, correct?
No, Emma Lou was the daughter.
Okay, so it's Lena.
Lena
was hit in the head with a rock, and she did have her throat slit, and she was drugged away from where it appears she was hit. So that's consistent with the MO.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that the other thing about it is I don't think he would have stuck around to slit Lena's throat. If Emma Lou's running away, there's a witness.
Yeah.
You're gonna go catch her and bash her head in.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna go do all the throat slitting part of things.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, after Emma Lou's account hit the papers and everybody had heard the description of the killer, we had our first confirmed attempt at a copycat killing.
Ooh.
Yeah. This is somebody named Katie Cochran. She wanted to murder her husband's girlfriend.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, I know. And her name was Maddie Alexander. So Mrs. Cochran was tall, so she figured she could pass herself off as the Ripper, so she dressed herself up in a black suit and a wide-brimmed Stetson hat. And then went and then went over to Maddie's house with a straight razor. And by the way, the whole thing about him wearing a black suit and a wide-brimmed hat, he didn't necessarily wear the same costume every time. Only one person saw him one time. I mean, he might have mixed up his wardrobe a little bit.
Hopefully.
So anyway, he goes over to Maddie's.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Now what?
I was just gonna say, like, in the early 1900s, it's not as though people had like extensive wardrobes. Right?
No, that's a good point.
It's not as though you had a closet full of clothes. You had different. I mean, there was such a thing as having different collar pieces. You would replace the collar on your shirt because that was what would get dirty and sweaty.
Mm-hmm.
You would wear the same shirt, the same suit jacket, the same pants for literally as long as you could.
No, that's a good point.
So it's not unreasonable
to
think that he might have had something the same or even very similar that were all interchangeable.
Well, and the other reason to wear dark clothes is at night. Blood doesn't show up on them.
They just don't show dirt as much.
Yeah.
Probably
I'm just thinking about the blood in general, and then kneeling
wear
over
red,
a victim.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wear red.
I mean, black is probably better. It
black
absorbs
works.
the blood and...
No, it helps
Joe
blend
saw
in.
Deadpool, obviously.
Yeah, I haven't
Where that
seen.
joke is coming from.
I have not seen Deadpool yet. I want to see it. But
I can tell you, as a lady who has to deal with blood on a very regular basis, black is the color.
Okay.
It's not red.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about the confrontation between Katie Cochran and Maddie Alexander.
Yeah.
So she goes over to her house with a straight razor, and her idea was to lure her out of the house and then kill her. Maddie answered the door, but not surprisingly refused to leave her house.
What?
Because it was out in the news. Maybe Katie Cochran shouldn't have telegraphed her intentions by dressing up like the Ripper.
That seems silly.
Yeah. She also made the mistake of talking about this to a couple of women, one of whom ratted her out.
I love that. You know what I think I'm going to do tonight? I think I'm going to be the Atlanta Ripper.
Yeah, I'm just going to go murder somebody.
I'm just going to go kill somebody.
Yeah.
I just don't like her very much, so I'm going to kill her.
I know. She's screwing around with my husband. Yeah. I'm going to go slit her throat. So she got 30 days in jail for that one.
30 days?
I know.
That's it?
Well, I mean, she didn't actually attempt the murder. She
kind of attempted the murder.
Well, she was planning on doing it.
She didn't do anything.
She didn't actually
to harm this woman.
All right, that's fair.
There's a lot of rulings that are around this case that are 27 days in jail. It's like, what?
Why?
Like today, that would be a 5-year sentence.
Yeah, there was some guy who was arrested and tried for. We're going to talk about him in a second, anyway.
All right.
Here he is. Yeah, July 1911, right around the same time, a guy named Jim Murphy was put on trial. It wasn't like the trial of the century because his crime was threatening to cut his wife's throat.
So it's a threat.
Yeah, it was a threat. Apparently, it was motivated by jealousy, and so he wanted to cut her throat. And at trial, somebody mentioned the possibility that Jim Murphy might actually be the Ripper. This is one of the guys who was one of the doubters. The judge at the trial, a guy named N.R. Broyles, said, and I'm quoting here, quote, "There is no such thing in Atlanta as a Negro Jack the Ripper," unquote. And he then went on to say, quote, "There are at least 1,000 Negro men in Atlanta today who stand ready to cut the throats of their wives at the slightest provocation."
I feel
unquote.
like you could edit that to say there are at least 10,000 men in Atlanta today who stand ready to cut the throats of their wives.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
yeah. This guy. But anyway, this guy was, kind of.
Didn't we say? Wasn't that a quote that we had recently that was like, the only thing that makes you a murderer is matrimony? That was like a couple months ago. There was something about that.
Can't remember which one that was.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah. So anyway, he was kind of a skeptic about of Atlanta. Thought that this was just a case of black people doing what black people do, which in their opinion was just killing each other.
Which is kind of a shame.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Julia Wallace.
Julia Wallace.
It was Julia Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
From a similar time period, in fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was right about that time, yeah.
Before 1950. That's all the same time period, right?
Oh, totally.
Between 1850 and 1950? The same
well,
time.
according to
It's
some
all the same.
people,
Yeah.
that era in time was made up. So,
I don't know if it was that particular spot.
It wasn't that spot.
It wasn't that one.
Yeah, it was
earlier.
a little
It was much
earlier than
earlier.
that. Yeah.
That's a different episode.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. That's kind of an interesting theory.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Oh, anyway, other
So
local...
most people thought most of the white population kind of thought it was a hoax, huh?
No, I wouldn't even say most, but there was a substantial
The
number
people
of
who maybe you wouldn't want to think it was a hoax? Like
Yeah.
judges and police officers and sheriffs and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if not a hoax, it wasn't connected.
Sure.
So, it wasn't one guy doing it all. It just happened to be a bunch of murders that happened to look similar that were not, according to the authorities, done by the same person.
Yeah, you gotta
Kind of like smiley face murders.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
like
like
that.
yeah. I mean, it's entirely possible. I think it's unlikely, but it's entirely possible that these were all just random murders. It could be. I doubt it. Oh, another theory that was out there was a local sheriff named Plenty Minor actually said that the killings were probably jealous wives who were just knocking off their husbands' girlfriends. Just maybe he was inspired by Katie Cochran. I don't know. And of course, we should remember back in those days, the whole phrase serial killer had not yet been invented, and maybe some people just couldn't wrap their minds around the idea that a single person would go around murdering random people.
Well, we
take that for granted
several
nowadays.
serial killers who were quite prolific to be busted and have very concrete evidence brought forward before I think that people just would actually accept it. It's like, nah, there's no way that guy killed all those people and stuffed them in his basement. And then they haul them all out of his basement and they go, oh, that's weird.
That's such a weird thing. Maybe we should investigate at some point.
What's that?
What did this thing not exist before this time? Was it way less prevalent, or was it just not?
The concept of a serial killer?
Not the concept. Did people just, in 1700s, were there not serial killers?
I heard
I would assume there had to have been, but were there not as many? Because there weren't as many people, or what?
Well, there's that, but
it's such an interesting question to me. Again, for another episode.
Well,
I've heard
now that you mentioned that, I heard a very interesting theory regarding that, and that is that serial killers have always been with us, and that is actually quite possibly the genesis of a lot of our monster tales, things like the werewolves and vampires and things like that. A lot of those superstitions might be from these weird killings that were happening, thousands of years ago. People in a village were showing up, disemboweled and cut into pieces and stuff like that. And so people invented monsters. So maybe
That's an interesting theory.
It is, and it's kind of hard to check out if it's true or not.
Yeah.
Without getting in the Wayback Machine. At this time, of course, in Atlanta, you can imagine black folks mostly believed in the Ripper's existence because, he was killing them.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, it was a scary time. A lot of people started spending a whole lot more time at home, believe it or not, especially at night.
Which probably, escalated the killing because, oh my God, I'm around my family all the time. I'm going to kill them.
I know that feel.
Those guys are
I know that
easy to
feels solidly.
identify. Anyway, the black women were afraid of being murdered, and black men were afraid of getting arrested and accused of being the Ripper. Because especially after
total climate of fear, yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely. And, after the mayor started putting pressure on the police, you could see how the cops might just decide to pin it on somebody. You know?
Which they did.
Yeah.
A
they
couple
did.
of times.
They at least tried. They arrested some people for it. Let's get back to our victim list. So we're almost done with that. The next murder, number 7, was on July 10th, 1911. That was Sadie Hawley. Her body was found by some workmen. She'd been bashed in the head with a large stone, which was found nearby. And then she was dragged off and her throat was cut. And in this case, her shoes had been cut off her feet, which was kind of an interesting thing.
That was not indicative of.
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
But it's indicative of the weird psychology of a serial killer.
Right, but it's not something that we had seen in the prior 6 cases that we know of.
Yeah.
Her shoes had been cut off her feet. Her feet hadn't been.
Correct.
Yeah. No.
Okay. My brain
This is
was
not
like,
the Salish Sea.
yeah. I'm sorry. My brain interpreted that the wrong way.
Yeah.
So her shoes were cut. Were her shoes found close to her body?
Yeah, pretty close.
But they were found.
They were found, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as though they were taken as a souvenir.
No, they weren't. The next murder I'm going to talk about, this is the one that might be real or it might be a copycat. This is one of the ones that McLaughlin and Bing took off their list, but I'm going to put it back on at least for a second here. Her shoes were also removed, and other than that, it was the usual MO, except for one other thing. This was Minnie Wise, by the way. And her right index finger had been hacked off at the middle joint, which was a little change up in the MO, and I have no idea why that happened. There's no real earthly reason for it that I can think of, although maybe, again, just some escalation.
Or it was a defensive.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, she may have seen him coming and put up her hand, and he took a swipe at her. And happened to catch a finger.
Would have had to have been a roll sharp knife to cut through a finger bone.
So listen, some of these attacks, the bodies are described as the heads nearly being taken off.
Okay, but so like, just in terms of like the physics of cutting a finger off.
Oh, I know.
Going through the bone and everything like that.
In the air,
he would have to hit it perfectly.
It would have had to been perfect.
Super sharp and super on target. I get that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that, it's the only reason.
But so like, but that's a different thing for me. Like, it's pretty easy if you're, sorry for the morbidity of this, but if a victim is laying, on their back on the ground, it's not so hard to shove a sharp knife in and pull it across to almost sever a head versus like in the air, my hands are up.
Oh no, I get it.
Going through bone. I think he probably deliberately took it off.
Yeah, it would have to have been like she was laying there, and it's not so hard to just something off if it's against solid ground.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why we use cutting boards. That's why we don't like cut carrots in the air.
Good point.
Right?
You don't.
I've actually heard that apparently fingers are similar to carrots.
Are they really? You talking about flavor or what?
in ease of cutting.
Oh, okay.
That's what
I would think they'd be tougher because you got bone.
I would think that would be the case, but apparently carrots, like the really thick ones, they can be pretty hard to cut through.
I suppose, yeah.
Especially with a dull knife.
We will.
That's how you cut fingers off. Whoa!
Okay, after the show, after we're done recording here, we're going to Rochambeau and pick one person, and I'm going to.
It's going to be like 4 rooms all over again, right?
Yeah.
With the lighter.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't seen that one.
You don't know. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, okay. What was it talking about?
Back to
Minnie Wise. Yeah, Minnie Wise. The finger. I'm thinking.
She also had a husband, right?
She did have a husband. But I was thinking with the finger. I was thinking. I wonder if she had a ring on that finger and it just didn't want to come off.
That's possible.
Yeah. Well, anyway, her husband, his name was Budwise, which I think is a cool
name.
Yeah, I like that. He was arrested. Apparently, she was jealous of her. Apparently, he was
jealous of her?
He was jealous of her, yeah. She was apparently sort of interested, I don't know if seriously or not, in some other guy, and he had threatened to kill her. The detectives in this case felt like he was just taking advantage of the whole Ripper thing to camouflage his own murder, and that it was, actually a copycat murder. But
which is something Joe thinks about a lot.
Yeah, exactly. No,
No, you do. I know you do.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm aware if a serial killer ever comes to light in Oregon, I'm going in hiding for a while.
Yeah, I know exactly, because I know time to kill Devin and replace her with somebody else. Yeah.
Just hide in his gun closet. You'll be safe.
Yeah, she doesn't have the combination. And it's possible.
Quick, come in here. You'll be safe.
Yeah. And it's possible this was a copycat killing. It's possible that a few of the other ones were copycat killings, because this is a great time to go settle a score. you just want to be really careful not to get arrested. You know, you got to kill just one person, and they all get pinned on you. So
Yeah.
that wouldn't be so good.
And that's why so many people, I feel like so many deaths were attributed to the Atlanta Ripper, because people were like, somebody's out there killing women, and I really hate that broad. Perfect opportunity, and just, you know, kill her in some fashion that you know it has something to do with cutting the neck, and then it gets lumped on. Like, that's why I feel like the number was so, was it 18 was the, or 19 or something? It was just, it was huge.
19, yeah. And,
Can we just pause to say that really upsets me?
What's that?
Just the fact that there are so many dudes out there in that supposition